I still view my baby brother as if he's 12 and he's 25, relatable. And I feel like our relationship could be so much stronger if I shifted my mental model to see him as a full functioning adult. I don't like the way it feels when I am so consumed by worry for my siblings. For me to reflect on being a parent figure for my siblings, I also have to reflect now on the ways that my parents' divorce has deeply impacted me. I got my first tattoo when I was a sophomore in college. I went with my mom, which some people think it's crazy that I went with my mom, but wait till you hear what the tattoo is. I went with my mom and my original dead body bestie. Her name is Mimi. I say original dead body bestie because our friendship, years before I ever came up with the 6 besties theory, she and I one day were describing each other as dead body besties. So while Mimi is many of the besties in the theory, she is the original dead body bestie in the sense that she and I called each other that for the first time many years ago when describing like our love and connection despite the miles between us and however long we go without speaking. Anyway, so I got the tattoo. It was December. It was winter break my sophomore year of college. And I was having a really hard time with my mental health at that point. I was living in the sorority house, which really was not a great thing for me. 50 girls under one roof, 50 different eating habits, 50 different human beings going through a pretty strange time of life. I think 19, 20 years old is hard. And I was just really struggling. I don't think I was seeing a therapist yet at that point. And I was on the brink of crisis mode, and I was feeling really alone. So I was having a hard time, and I was beginning to want to find things to make myself feel better. Some people experiment with their hair when they need, a big life change that doesn't involve self-sabotage. Changing your hair is a great way to spice things up when you're feeling a little out of control because it's not that big of a deal to change your hair. And I began to think that I really wanted a tattoo. I really wanted a tattoo. And, generally I don't think I'd recommend doing something so permanent when you are in a flux state or a state of crisis, or I don't know. But I wanted a tattoo. I wanted to get something that reminded me of my strength and where I came from, something that would maybe make me feel less alone. So one day, I took out a piece of paper and I drew on it in cursive an AIJ, connected as if one word, for Alexandra, Isabella, Jack, my 3 siblings. I'm the oldest, then Bella, and then Jack. And I went with my mom and Mimi that December. I think my mom went and got her nails done next door because I wanted her to be there, but I didn't want her to be in there with me. And my friend Mimi held my hand and I got the tattoo, and it's right on my rib cage, and the tattoo's precious to me. I frankly forget that it's there, but whenever I do stop to think about why I got it, that I wanted to get my siblings' names tattooed on me. That is kind of wild. And I thought that tattoo story was just a perfect segue to today's episode topic, which is sibling dynamics, and particularly when there's an age gap between you and your siblings. My brother, Jack, turned 24 early January, and when I posted about it on my stories, I included a little bit of commentary about what it's like having an 8.5-year age difference between you and a sibling, and how, I don't know, just the wonderful parts of that, the parts of that have been challenging. And I got such an overwhelming response from so many people. It's so interesting to notice what you guys respond to in my Instagram stories. I am posting there a lot more now, and it's been like a really cool way to, I know some people don't love to comment on things publicly, and Instagram is the only place where I have my private messages open. And it's been really informative for me in wanting to learn more about all of you, to see what you respond to. And I got so many messages about this topic of siblings from other oldest children wanting to learn and wanting to talk about how to reconnect with their younger siblings, the pressures they feel to take care of their younger siblings. I heard from younger siblings who say that they feel like their older siblings don't see them as adults, even if they're 30. It was just such an overwhelming response, and I was inspired to talk about it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Sibling dynamics. I'm going to read some of the questions and thoughts that you guys sent my way, and we can talk about those more. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my siblings and what it's been like for me, and we're just gonna have a conversation. So I guess I want to start with, rooting you in where I am coming to this conversation from. So my experience with siblings, I feel like my experience with my siblings is defined by 3 core factors. One is that our parents are divorced. Two, there is a big age gap with me and my brother, 8.5 years. And three, that I'm the oldest. All of those things on their own are like identity makers, but I feel like the three of them together says a lot about me. And when I think about those three things and how they intersect together, it helps me understand myself. It helps me understand the ways that my siblings might relate to me. I don't know. They're like three core pieces of my identity. So my parents got divorced when I was in 7th or 8th grade. It was like the separation to divorce pipeline. Like I don't remember exactly how long it took, but 7th to 8th grade is when they got divorced, and my brother was 5, which 5 years old is pretty young. My mom actually was 5 years old when her parents got divorced too. I remember we were sitting in my dad's study. Was it called? Did we call it his study? It was this little reading room in the front of the house that we had, and it had these two wonderful armchairs that I loved to sit and read in. And I think the walls were painted like a dark, dark green. And on one of the walls was a built-in bookshelf. And my dad loves Larry Bird, and he had a Larry Bird Wheaties signed box that was up on one of the shelves in like a plastic or glass container. And I never understood like why we were saving a cereal box. I wonder if people still do that. Anyway, I loved that room. I loved sitting in that room. And I remember they read us. I already knew that they were getting divorced because, again, oldest child. And I was, old enough to know, but they read us a Berenstain Bears divorce book. And my brother was 5. And I share that story because I think it kicked off for me a feeling of needing to be there to help support my siblings through a challenging time. And as we grew up, as the oldest, I did support my parents a lot with my siblings, particularly my mom. For Christmas, we were in Florida visiting my mom and going to see my grandma. We were all sitting around and somehow stories of high school came up. And my mom made a comment. She's like, yeah, and then when Alexandra went to college, I lost my driver. And we laughed, and I was like, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. There was something so validating about hearing from my mom one of the ways that I helped her in high school. And of course, it's not like out of the ordinary for an older sibling to like drive their younger siblings places sometimes. But to hear her sort of refer to me as like, when Alexandra left, it became more complicated because I no longer had somebody to help me with this responsibility. That felt very validating for me as a 31-year-old that my mom and I together could kind of like laugh about that, but acknowledge it. It validated me in the sense that like, yeah, I did have responsibilities. And of course the car is just driving is just one example. But I remember feeling responsible as the oldest, given the divorce, pretty much from the get-go. And I think it's been really hard for me to shed that role. When I posted about Jack's birthday originally, somebody wrote it and said, if you can share any thoughts you have on the older sibling that behaves like a third parent dynamic, that would be so helpful to hear as the younger sibling. And as I was reflecting on it, it's like, if you have a sibling that behaves like a parent, consider, was there a point when they had to behave like a parent? For me, I think there definitely was. I think that there definitely was a time when I was doing parent-like responsibilities. I can't imagine how hard it is to be a parent. So let me also just say that. Like, I have, especially as I've gotten older and I see friends, it's going to make me emotional already. It's hard for me to reflect and talk about the ways that I have felt like a parent to my siblings I can't talk about it without also talking about, my parents' divorce. And I think that for many years of my life, I acted like that didn't matter. Many years of my adult life, I should say, because obviously when I was a kid, it mattered a whole lot and it was super, super hard. And one of the many ways that I coped with that was to lean heavily into the ways that it was better. And it was, I do firmly believe that like staying married in a marriage that isn't working is also not good for children. So divorce is hard, but like, what's the other alternative? I think that could be harder in ways. But for me to reflect on being a parent figure for my siblings, I also have to reflect now on the ways that my parents' divorce has deeply impacted me. And that feels really hard to do. And I sort of feel like I feel like it's sometimes in like the baby stages again as an adult of grappling with that. Maybe I'm just saying this for me, but like it feels really important for me that while I talk about this dynamic, like what it's like as an oldest child, sometimes stepping in and serving as a parent to the younger siblings, it feels really important to me to just like clarify and say that I have so much like empathy and understanding for why that happened in my life. And I have lots of feelings about it, obviously, that I'm unpacking, that I am unpacking in my life right now. But I have so much empathy and understanding for why that happened. So I just feel the need to say that if I'm going to continue talking about this, which I'm going to continue talking about it now. So there have been some surprising effects of being like a parent to your siblings that have definitely affected me in adulthood. And one of them is that I feel kind of not concerned, but I feel like I actually have had a taste of what it might feel like to have children, in that there were times in my life when I really was so worried and consumed by the well-being and happiness of my two siblings. And I've done a lot of work in life to like, I don't even know if boundaries is the right word, but to re-identify myself as their sister and not as a mother. Even if I haven't explicitly labeled that in therapy, like when I look at my 20s, I think I spent a lot of my 20s trying to like take back that role. Like, I want to be your sister. I don't want to be like a mom. I may have gone about that in ways that weren't always the most helpful, but I think I did a really good job of taking back that role where I am now, like older sister. And I'd be curious how they see me. But there are times still when that mom feeling comes out, and it makes me, I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the way it feels when I am so consumed by worry for my siblings. And it definitely scares me thinking about having that feeling towards a child all the time. My sister has an incredible boyfriend now who we love. And I think that actually him being in our life has relieved a lot of that for me, because I think they are so great together, and I'm so happy they found each other, and the way they support each other is so beautiful. And knowing that my sister has found someone who sees her and helps her and makes her laugh and, fits in with our family, like accepts her, all of that. God, I'm such a fucking crybaby. All of that does allow me as the oldest sibling to feel a little bit like, okay, I can breathe a little easier now, though the worry doesn't go away. But I remember before she met him, she had another breakup, and I was really worried about her then. Like when she was going through the pain of that, though I do think I was an amazing big sister, and I was so proud of her for doing this. When the breakup happened, I'm like, I was living in New York then, she was in Boston. I'm like, get on the train, book the train right now. Let's not even think about it. Book the train, get your ass to the Amtrak and come see me. And she came right away, and then she stayed with me for the weekend. And it was it like broke me. It broke my heart seeing her in pain, and her pain, my siblings' pain is my pain. And I think thinking about children, like, oh, I remember when girls were mean to me, or when, God forbid, my high school boyfriend, some of the some of the, real pain that I experienced with friendship and with relationships in high school. I remember my mom wanted to run these people over with her car. Like I remember how awful it was for my mom, and how my mom just wanted to take it away from me. And I feel like I felt a fraction of that with my siblings. Even, my brother's 24. My brother is like a young man. He is an adult. And I feel like there are so many examples actually of how I still feel like Jack is my baby brother, and how I feel compelled to like mother him and shape him. I'm so grateful for Brian, who can really step in as an older brother. Brian and Jack have a really special relationship. They've known each other. Brian met Jack when Jack was 11 or 12. So they've been in each other's lives for a really long time. And Brian definitely helps me when I start to spiral about Jack. For example, my brother recently moved from Boston to New York for a big job opportunity. And he's been in this job now for a few months, and he's doing really well. But in the beginning, he was working a lot. And I completely projected my fears about that onto him. Now, I didn't share this with him, but I certainly shared it with Brian. And, I know Jack texted one night his first week that he was coming home at 9 o'clock or something. And I felt really alarmed by that. it scared me. I felt suddenly scared that my brother was going to be in a position that was going to be too much for him, and that he wasn't going to know, he was going to get burned out. And you know what I was doing? I was thinking a lot about how I have felt when I have been overworked and how hard that was for me. I wasn't thinking about whether that was even a problem for Jack. And Brian would remind me then, Jack is 24. It's not going to be like this forever. Jack just started a new job. He's trying to get the lay of the land. He's okay. He's doing what 24-year-old analysts do when they're working in the type of field that he's working in. He knows what he's doing. He's loved. You can check in on him, but don't freak out. Don't be like his mother. Not saying that my mom does that, though she certainly does, but like just don't you be his sister. Be his sister. And that has been really hard for me. As an older sibling, I worry that my siblings will experience the same things that I've experienced. I don't want them to feel the pain that I've experienced. So when I see them, even in the vicinity, walking down a path that could lead them to a negative door I opened, even when that door sucked at times but opened up something new for me, like I don't want them to experience it. I want to prevent them from feeling pain, and I want them to learn from my mistakes instead of having to make their own mistakes. And that sounds a lot to me like the way a parent thinks about their child. And maybe all siblings feel like this in some ways, but I don't know. I think the divorce, age gap, oldest trifecta really magnifies that in a way that's been exhausting sometimes. And though has definitely made us very close. And I'm really grateful for like the work I've done to try to not just be like their mother, because it's allowed us to become friends, I think. And it's allowed me and my siblings to really in the last few years, especially as Jack has graduated college and gone a little older, I think we've all kind of come into ourselves. And now I think that we are like friends. The closeness of my siblings, of the three of us, has never been in question. Like at any time in our life, I think all three of us would have been like, yeah, we're extremely close. We're extremely close. And now I feel like we are extremely close and we are friends. And there's been another interesting dynamic to evolve, which is that I am trying to learn how to not just be the older sister and fall into like tropes of what I think it means to be an older sister, which is like the caretaker, the one who doesn't need any help, the one who they never need to worry about. You guys know listening that last year was a hard year for me. And there was a moment when I realized that my sister was worrying about me. I forget exactly what she said. It was maybe around my birthday. But when I realized that she was worried about me, it made me feel sad to know that like my younger siblings could be worried about me. I know they felt worried about me in the past, and it just sort of, interestingly though, it didn't make me feel ashamed, but it did make me realize like, oh, yes, I'm the older sister, but they don't need me to be this like perfectly put together person. They see me actually as the real, flawed, compassionate person who needs love and support like everybody else. Since that had happened, something in me sort of shifted where I was like, you know what? Maybe a way to continue this closeness with my siblings is to actually like ask them for help. And I was feeling really overwhelmed with my work over the summer and didn't know how to prioritize and was really struggling. And I decided to talk to my sister about it. And I called Bella and I was venting a little bit. And she said, Alexandra, I can help you with this. I literally do this professionally. My sister is an HR business partner. She literally works with like C-level executives at her company to better communicate with their teams. And she helps managers work with their teams better, prioritize. She's like, I can help you with this. Let me go to my meeting. I have a meeting in 2 minutes. Let me call you back. She went to her meeting, she called me back, and she like acted like my manager for an hour. And we went through my priorities. We went through all of the things I was struggling with. She helped me identify if I was going to hire somebody to help me with some of the stuff I needed help with, like what's the kind of person I need. She took notes while I talked for like 45 minutes. So I was just walking up and down my street, blabbing about everything that I was feeling lost with. And she took notes and then sent it back to me in an organized way. That is sisterly love. And it made me feel so connected to my sister that I asked her to do that and that she was there for me. And I know it made her feel good too, to be able to be there for her older sister. And I've tried to remember that I am historically not good at asking for help, which isn't something I realized that I was really bad at until my therapist pointed it out to me. And even then it took me, months to accept that. But I think that, one of the questions that people have asked is like, how do I become closer with my siblings as the oldest? One way that I think I'm getting closer with my siblings is by allowing myself to be like the baby, or like allow myself to be supported by my siblings and not just be the one that supports them. All human beings want to help each other. We all want to like feel agency. We all want to feel like adults. And it actually helps everybody involved when you as the oldest sibling cannot just act like you have it all together, which I think is a protection mechanism, right? But it helps when you say, hey, I actually need help. And you, my younger sibling, I see you as the full-formed adult that you are with a unique skill set. Can you help me? Can you help me with this? And I'm lucky that my sister offered her help and sort of coaxed me into asking for it when I wasn't yet ready, I guess, or didn't yet know that I could ask for it myself. So I'm lucky she did that then. But now I certainly will continue doing that. And even going back to my brother and his job, I think after I posted about his birthday, and I originally thought maybe I would invite them on the podcast, and maybe I still will, but I have to decide if that's something that I feel comfortable with. I know they both would if I asked them to, but I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, so I'm going to noodle on that for a bit. But when we talked about it that night, and I told him about how stressed I've been and how worried I have felt at times about him and his work, he basically said, I hear you, but I'm going to be on my own path, and I know that you're there for me. And I know that if something comes up, I know that I can call you and that we will, we'll figure it out together. But I got to make my own mistakes. I'm on my own journey. And hearing him say that, like hearing him acknowledge that did make me feel better. Though, of course, in the back of my mind, it also sparks the worry of like, well, will he actually call me if something's wrong? Will he actually call me? But that's why I too need to continue to call and make an effort. Even having like my little brother pick up the phone and call me, which he does all the time now, is a strange concept. Like, how is my baby brother old enough to be calling to check in, to say hi? Just the other day, this week, he called me out on this actually. He had called me to say hi and we're chatting. And at the end, he goes, so do you ever call people just to say hi? I said, yeah, all the time. And he said, well, you never call me. And for some reason, the call just to say hi, he's right. I hadn't just called him to say hi, but now I actually called him the next day, and we thought that was sort of funny since we had just spoken. But I appreciated that he could be direct with me about that in a loving way, in a silly way. And now I know that it's important. It's important to both of us that I call, but I'm glad that he kind of called me in that way. So I will continue doing it. So I'm going to read to you some of the messages that I received from people who are the oldest. So one person said, as the oldest, I feel so much responsibility for being a good older sister, and I have zero idea on how to connect with my younger siblings. I want to meet them where they're at and accept them for who they are now. And someone else said, I'm the oldest of 5, and my youngest sibling is almost 12 years younger. I really noticed our lack of meaningful relationship over the holidays, but I'm not sure how to shift it. I've been out of the house for so much of their lives. And another person said, I still view my baby brother as if he's 12 and he's 25. Relatable. And I feel like our relationship could be so much stronger if I shifted my mental model to see him as a full functioning adult. I feel like all 3 of these speak to the idea that like a quick way to feel disconnected from someone is when you don't try to see them and learn about them for who they are right now. Not just all the context you know about them. Not just like all the stuff that you've seen, which with siblings, that can be really hard. You have so much context of what you all have been through, and yet our own experience of our family, I think, colors sometimes the way we see our siblings. Like with me and my siblings, we all have the 3 of us have the same parents, and yet the 3 of us have different childhoods, which is wild to think about. Yes, we have some shared experiences, but we have different memories of those experiences. My siblings literally have different, like they lived in, I left at a point and things changed when I left. My brother moved in with my mom and my stepdad. They all lived together in high school. Like that's a completely different experience than my high school experience. And I think part of reconnecting with your siblings as adults is being like, hey, I know that I think I know everything about you because I think that we had the same life, but we actually didn't. And we don't. And I want to learn about you now. And I think that asking for like help on things, as I was talking about with Bella, or asking for their opinions on things and like really wanting to learn about what their life is like, what their perspective is on stuff, I think that that can be a great way to show your younger sibling and yourself that you really want to know them. I think there's a little bit of like rewiring our brains too that you have to do as the oldest sibling of like, it's almost easier to keep your younger sibling in the younger sibling bucket instead of trying to like learn about them and accept them. Like sometimes my brother has said things that, or like has acted in ways that I'm like, oh my God, no. But then I'm like, what he's saying actually isn't, the way he's acting like isn't actually bad. Like he just is just, he's 19 and I haven't been around a 19-year-old in a while. And he's actually like really sweet and thoughtful. And I don't have anything to be concerned about for all the big things, but I'm picking on all these little things because why? So I think part of being a good older sibling too is, and wanting to reconnect with them is like trying to keep your judgment aside and like not pick apart everything. That's something that I've had to really like practice. Like I don't need to share my opinion on everything. Even tonight I was talking with Jack and I asked him if he had a warm enough coat in New York. And he said, I have a peak coat. And I said, well, is it warm enough? And he said, it could be warmer. And I said, well, maybe you should get a puffer jacket. And he said he wants a Montclair one. And I immediately was like, I hate Montclair jackets. And then I went on like a little tirade about why I don't like Montclair. And he was laughing and he's like, okay, you're right. Fashionista, I won't get Montclair. Like, did I need to do that? I maybe would argue, yes, I did need to do that. I don't want my brother wearing a Montclair jacket. No offense to anybody who likes Montclair. That's beside the point. If you notice that you don't have a meaningful relationship, I think you can also be honest about that, saying, hey, it's been so long since we've lived in the house together, and I feel like I really want to get to know you in the new adult that you are now. Can I take you to lunch? Or just making these short phone calls when you're driving to the dentist, like giving them a call, being casual and just catching up, asking them what they're doing that day. I know it can feel really awkward sometimes and like scary. And I know it seems crazy. Like, why would you be scared about calling your sibling? But like, it can be scary because they're not the sibling that you knew when you were younger. They're a different person. So in some ways it might feel like you're calling a stranger. But I think to bridge that, to begin to shift that so you can begin to go into a meaningful space, a meaningful relationship with them, I think it starts with reaching out, showing your interest, acknowledging the gap if there is one, expressing your desire for things to be different. I think it starts there. I think I've gotten so much closer with my brother, weirdly since living in California, because Brian and I have invited him to come visit us. And Jack now has come for 2 full weeks, I think. The first year we were here, he came out for a week to visit. And then this past summer, he came out for a week to visit. By the way, I would never let anybody else come visit me for a week, but it's my younger brother and I'm not going to say no to him. I thought it was so sweet that he wanted to come out for a whole week. He came out for a whole week, and while I definitely wanted to kill him at points, like he's blasting his music in the shower in the morning, it's early, he says some snarky things to me that I thought were disrespectful, normal sibling stuff, but it was like really precious time to get to connect with each other. I introduced him to orange wine. I loved getting to take him to all, the spots that I love. We went to the beach together one day and I made him carry all my shit and we ate sandwiches together and talked about his goals, learning that my brother's like really entrepreneurial. I think another thing, maybe this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think sometimes as oldest siblings, maybe younger siblings feel this too. You guys, younger siblings listening, let me know. The stuff that we feel triggered by in our siblings is often stuff that we don't like about ourselves or that we know we've struggled with ourselves. So sometimes if either of my siblings actually are talking about an issue they have with work, which of course everybody has issues with work as working adults, I sometimes feel Bella and I have I don't really feel this with Bella, but with Jack, because he's the baby. He's not the baby, but see, I'm checking myself. I see myself in him and I want to make sure he doesn't make the mistakes I've made. And sometimes I think we can, all siblings listening, really think about if that is a barrier to your connection with them. Sometimes we distance ourselves, we create distance from people we love because they remind us of something painful. And we can't really get rid of that. Like with siblings, you look the same, you have similar mannerisms. Every now and then when I'm editing my podcast or editing videos of myself, I'm like, oh my God, I just looked like Bella. I just did something with my face that looked like Bella. So you can never get rid of it, but I kind of think that acknowledging it and acknowledging when Jack's talking about X, I'm having a reaction to it because it's reminding me of myself. But Jack and I aren't the same person. My sibling and I aren't the same person, and I'm gonna take a step back. Does he need my advice? If he asks for my advice on it, I'm here to give it with my perspective. But actually, the best thing you can do is just like be loving and listen. That's the best way we can show our younger siblings that they are adults and that they are whole people, is not by just telling them what to do, right? They have their parents for that. But yeah, inviting Jack to visit was definitely like inviting your sibling to come stay with you, I think is a great way to connect and get to know each other. From the younger sibling perspective, somebody wrote, I'm the youngest with 2 older brothers, and I feel like I'm trapped in the little sister box. They don't see me as a full person. And someone else said, I'm the youngest of 6. My oldest sibling is 11 years older, and I've always felt that they have a hard time seeing me as an adult, even though I'm almost 30. I'm so glad I'm happy to hear that perspective. Or I'm not happy to hear that perspective, but it's an important perspective to include in this conversation. Like the effect of older siblings, like we all affect each other. The ways we behave, even though we can have a lot of like empathy and understanding for why we do it, they do certainly affect each other. So older siblings listening, our younger siblings can feel it when we do that. And at best makes them feel misunderstood and at worst resentful. Younger siblings, I think it could be, look, I don't know your older siblings, but it could be a real powerful moment for you to tell them that. You can frame it in like a positive way, like we have an age gap between us, or even if you don't, I know I'm your baby sister, and it's got to be weird seeing me as an adult now. Sometimes it's weird for me seeing you guys growing up. I still think of us as, all in high school together, or we never lived in the same house together. So it's sort of strange for me to even think of us as siblings. But I really want to have a relationship with you guys where we are equals. I want to have an adult sibling relationship. And I thought we could just talk about the ways that we might still see each other as kids and how we can kind of grow beyond that. Like bringing that up with your siblings could open something really magical. And you don't need to approach it as, you never see me as an adult, I'm grown up now. I think that approaching conversations through wanting to connect rather than calling out the ways you are already disconnected, I just think that gives you a better opportunity to get the result you want, if the result you want is connection. The note I want to leave us on is that it's never too late to start reimagining your relationship with your siblings. Yes, they are the relationships you are given from the moment you enter this earth, or if you're the youngest or whatever. They're the easiest relationships you have in the sense that they are just there and they are a given, but they're also some of the most complex because of all of the family context that is, inherent in them. And that's why I want to say, like, it's never too late to start over or to start anew. You can never start over. You can never completely wipe the slate clean, but we can always start learning about each other as adults, and how special it is to be able to meet your siblings, right? You get to meet them for the first time as the people that you each have decided to be. And the best thing we can do for our siblings is be their siblings, not their parent, and not them either. Like, I think, somebody wrote in saying that their younger sister and their older brother is dealing with some significant mental health issues, which is challenging for so many reasons, including like sometimes he feels like the younger brother to her. And it is incredibly difficult to watch a loved one struggle with their mental health or with addiction or with self-sabotage or with making choices that you don't want them to make. But maybe it's not a but, it's an and. I think that we preserve our relationship with our siblings when we accept that we are not them and they are going to make their own choices. And the best thing we can do for ourselves and for them, like, we can love our siblings harder and better when we take away some of the pressure and the responsibility we feel for them to be happy or to make the right choices. And maybe that's a heavy note to end on, but I think it's a really important one, because that responsibility and that pressure, I think, was looming over me for a really long time, and I certainly still do feel it. And they probably feel that about me too. I have my shit. I'm not perfect. I'm sure I'd make decisions sometimes, and they're like, I wish Alexandra would just see that, some of the realizations that I've come to now about having fun with my work and my health, not taking myself so seriously. And those are the very surface level things I've learned, but I've learned a lot about, I'm feeling happy. And I'm sure that there are things that my siblings, some of the things I've learned, they're like, yeah, I was telling you that, and I wish you could have just seen it earlier, because it would have saved you from pain. Like, I'm sure my siblings feel that way about me, as I have felt about people in my life that I love. And people have to learn for themselves. And sometimes it doesn't end well. Sometimes people get really hurt, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I don't mean this to end in in a dark way. I think I see this actually as hopeful. Like, what gives me hope for people with complex sibling dynamics, I think actually that I'll say it again, like, I think we can love harder when we accept that we can't control our siblings, and they're going to live the life that they're going to live, and they're going to make the choices they're going to make. But we can help them make the best choices by showing up for them, seeing them as they are, loving them. Yeah. Sibling relationships, man, complex, lot there. Lot to think about. I'd love to hear what this episode sparked for you. If there's topics that you'd like to hear me talk about, explore. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, guys. I know this was a new format where we just sort of talked about a theme. I got emotional, as I always do. I'm so grateful for your support of the experimentation that's going to happen with this podcast. I love you all. I appreciate you. You can find me on Instagram at AFHaze. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like. I appreciate you. If you listen on any of the streaming platforms, please give it a 5-star review if you haven't already. That's so helpful for the show reaching new listeners. And just let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments. You can message me on Instagram. I check my messages there mostly. I go through them. There's quite a lot, but I try to go through and open new ones each day so I can start conversations and meet with all of you. And with that, I will talk to you guys when I talk to you. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.